Hi, I'm Sean. It's a beautiful day outside, the sun is shining, you guys know what time it is. It's time to math. Today's topic is factoring quadratics. Last video, we covered solving quadratics using the quadratic formula. If you haven't checked that video out, the video link will be in the description. Before we get into factoring quadratics, let's review what we learned last video. Last video, we learned the quadratic formula and how to solve with it. So let's apply what we learned last video to this equation right here. 2x squared minus 3x minus 2 equals 0. So we know a quadratic is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And as you can see, there's an x squared right here, an x, and a constant. So this is indeed a quadratic. But in order to use the quadratic formula, we have to identify our variables, our b, a, and c. So let's do that. So the a is the coefficient in front of the x squared. What number is in front of the x squared? Oh, it's a 2. So let's identify a equals 2. And then let's do our b. The b coefficient is in front of the x. What number is in front of the x? It's a 3. But in front of the 3 is a minus sign, so that means it's a negative 3. b equals negative 3. Same for c. c is the constant, and at the very end we have a negative 2, since you're subtracting a 2. So c equals negative 2. Now that we have our variables, we can plug them into the quadratic formula and solve. So let's see, negative b. Let's write it out first. And guys, this is a very important formula, the quadratic formula. That's pretty much the biggest thing when learning quadratics. Factoring is nice, but it's not completely reliable. Quadratic formula is really what you really need to know. It might look hard to learn at first, but trust me, memorize it. It'll be helpful. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, now let's plug in our variables. Negative b is negative 3, so negative 3 plus or minus. And remember that plus or minus means that we have two solutions. One is when we add, and the other one is when we subtract. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 3 squared minus 4 times, what is a? A is 2, so 4 times 2 times, what is c? Negative 2. All over 2a. So what is a? A is 2. So 2 times 2. There we have it. So now we can simplify it further. Negative times a negative. So a negative 3 is pretty much a positive 3. So positive 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared. So negative 3 squared means negative 3 times negative 3, which is a positive 9. So 9 minus, what is 4 times 2 times negative 2? Well, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times negative 2 is negative 16. So minus a negative 16 all over 2 times 2 is 4. And we can simplify the square root as 3 plus or minus square root of 9 minus a negative 16 is the same as 9 plus a positive 16. That's the rule when you're subtracting negatives. So 9 plus 16 is 25, all over 4 again, and so we have 3 plus or minus square root of 25. Square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. So 3 plus or minus 5 over 4. So our two solutions are 3 plus 5 over 4 and 3 minus 5 over 4. So 3 plus 5 over 4 is 8 over 4 equals 2. And 3 minus 5 is negative 2, since 3 minus 5 is negative 2, over 4 is 2 over 4 is equal to a negative 1/2. So those are our two solutions. Factoring quadratics is quicker, but is not always reliable. We like to use the Kendrick method. It's actually called the Berry method, but we think that Dr. Kendrick, shout out to him by the way, congrats Dr. K for getting your doctorate, but we use his method. So we have our first problem. We could use the quadratic formula, but there are faster ways. As you get better at factoring quadratics, it becomes faster and it becomes easier for you. So this I could find, this I could already find the solution to. But I'm here to show you guys, not me. So x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. So what we do is first multiply the a coefficient by the c variable. So since there's no number in front of the x squared, there's technically a 1, and then this is a 6. So 6. A times c is 6. And then we need to find factors of 6 that add to a negative 5, the b coefficient. So A, B, C. So what are factors of 6? Remember, these could be positive or negative factors. So let's try 6. 6 is obviously equal to 1 times 6. So, but does that add to a negative 5? See, 1 plus 6 is 7, not a negative 5. Let's see, 2 times 3. 2 times 3 is also 6, but that adds to 2 plus 3 is 5, which is not what we're looking for, negative 5. So let's go over to the negative numbers. Negative 1 times negative 6, that's still equal to 6, but let's add them up. Negative 1 plus negative 6 is negative 7, which is not what we're looking for. Let's do the last pair. Negative 2 times negative 3. Hey, negative 2 plus negative 3 is equal to negative 5, so that's what we're looking for. So after that, we have our two pairs. X minus 2, that's where you drop the minus 2, and then x minus 3. Those, when they multiply out, they should be equal to this. So let's check our work real quick. Let's FOIL it out. FOIL is a very useful, something you really, really need to know. X squared, x times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is minus 3x. Negative 2 times x is minus 2x. And then negative 2 times negative 3, negative times negative is a positive, equals plus a positive 6. So let's combine our like terms. X squared minus 5x plus 6. That's what we had originally. So that's how we factored it out. So now that we have x minus 2 times x minus 3 equals 0, all we need to do is find what solves these solutions. So since it's multiplication, all we need to do is make one of these equal to 0. So let's solve for x in this one. What minus 2 equals 0? Well, of course, that's 2. So that's going to be one of our solutions. And what minus 3 equals 0? Well, that's 3. It's as easy as that. Those are your two solutions. If you want to plug them in to check your answer, which is always good, let's plug in 2. 2 squared minus 5 times 2 plus 6 equals 0. 2 squared equals 4, minus 5 times 2 is 10, plus 6 equals 0. 4 minus 10 is negative 6, plus 6 equals 0. So that is correct. Let's check it for 3. 3 squared minus 5 times 3 plus 6 equals 0. So 3 squared is 9, minus 5 times 3 is 15, plus 6 equals 0. 9 minus 15 is negative 6, plus positive 6 cancels out to equal 0. So that's what you do when you have a coefficient of 1. Here, in the next problem, we have a coefficient of 3. So that's a little more complicated, but not that complicated. Okay. First, again, we always identify our variables. So what is a? In front of the x squared, we have a 3, so we can immediately deduce that a equals 3. B is 8. And c equals 5. A, B, C. Now remember, we want to multiply the a by the c, and then we'll just drop down our variables. 3x. Drop down the a. So 3 times 5 is 15. And then what factors of 15 add to a positive 8? So since 8 is positive, you can probably use common sense to find that the factors that add to positive 8 also have to be positive. Since a positive and a positive or a negative can only multiply to a positive 15, we know that both of the factors have to be positive. So let's list the factors of 1 and 15. 1 times 15, of course, and 3 times 5. Which one of those adds to 8? Well, obviously, it's going to be a 3 and a 5, since 3 times 5 is 15, and 3 plus 5 equals 8. As you get better at factoring, you don't have to list out the factors. Once you know, you can just drop it down, and you can skip that step. But for now, I'm teaching you guys, we're going to list the factors. So, this is a positive 3, so this is plus 3, plus 3, or 5 right here. But since we multiply it by 1, we have to simplify one of these. And which one can be simplified? This one, because this has a common factor of 3. So this is x plus 1. You divide it by 3 and x plus 1. So let's check our work. We have x plus 1 using FOIL times 3x plus 5. That's 3x squared, right? And then the outside, x times 5 equals plus 5x. 1 times 3x is 3x. And 1 times 5 is plus 5. Oops, that's an ugly 5. So combining our like terms, we get 3x squared plus 8x plus 5. And that's right. That's what we had originally. So let's erase this so we can. And since we're solving this quadratic, we want this to equal 0. Sorry about that. Equals 0. So what we want to do is do what we did the first time. So we want to, since this is both multiplication, we need one of these, either of them, to be equal to 0. So let's solve for the first one. X plus 1 equals 0. So that means x is equal to a negative 1. 3x plus 5 equals 0. So that's not as obvious, so let's solve using algebra. So subtract 5 from both sides. 3x equals negative 5. Divide both sides by 3. X equals negative 5 over 3. Negative 5 over 3. Those are our two solutions.